Now to conclude Chapter 5, we're going to put together all the different skills we've learned so far and talk about equations and inequalities. So another way to solve an equation with fractions is to clear the fractions. Clear the fractions. Oops. By multiplying each side of the equation by the lowest common denominator of the fractions, the resulting equation is equivalent to the original equation. So we're going to make sure that we do the same thing to all the terms in the equation, and by doing so, it will be easier to solve. We can clear the fractions and continue to solve with the algebra rules we already know. So looking at our first equation, we're looking at the denominators. I have a 6, a 2, and a 4. Again, to find the least common denominator, we're going to go to the largest denominator, which is 6. 2 can go into 6, but 4 cannot go into 6. So I'm going to go back to that largest one, 6, and I'm going to double it to 12. 2 can go into 12 evenly, and 4 can as well. So our lowest common denominator is going to be 12. So what I want to do is I want to multiply every term on both sides by 12. So now I need to do some reducing. So the first term, and I like to rewrite these so that when I'm reducing, I'm not crossing out a number that I need to use again with the distributive property. So I'm going to write 12 times negative 5/6x plus 12 times 1/2 equals 3/4 times 12. I'll go ahead and change pen color here so you can see my reducing. 6 goes into 6 once. 6 goes into 12 twice. So now I have 2 times a negative 5. So I have a negative 10x. Now I move on to my next one. 2 goes into 2 once. 2 goes into 12 6 times. 6 times 1. So I have plus 6. And 3/4 times 12. 4 goes into 4 once. 4 goes into 12 3 times. 3 times 3 equals 9. So now you can see in the white I have a new equation, and this is a regular algebraic equation. Get my like terms together. So I'm going to subtract 6 from this side and run out of room here, but I have a negative 10x, and that's going to equal 9 minus 6 is 3. And I'm going to have to move over to the side a little. Divide both sides by negative 10. So I'm going to end up with x equals a negative 3/10 because I divided both sides by a negative 10. Make my negative a little bit easier to see there. We'll do some more clearing of the fractions, but there's also a method for clearing the decimals. Again, I'll change color so we can see the difference here. So very similar to common denominator, this time we're going to look for the biggest place value that we have. And so I noticed that 2.3, I have 1 digit behind the decimal, but 5.14, I have 2 digits behind the decimal. So I'm going to use 2 digits. I want to get them out of fractions, so I'm going to use the value of 100 because the biggest value here, or the greatest decimal value, would be hundredths. So to clear those, I want to multiply everything by 100. Now, if you remember how we're multiplying with decimals, if I'm going to multiply 2/3 by 100, I look at the number of zeros I have, and that's how many times I move the decimal. So I'm going to move the decimal twice, so I need to give it a placeholder So 2.3 changes to 230. Again, my stylus is starting to act a little odd here. Sometimes it works if I just erase it better than trying to undo it. So moved it 2 places, so I end up with the number 230. Now when I move the decimal 2 places, because I'm multiplying by 100 for 5.14, that'll change to 514. And if I can clear my 5 there. And then 2 places for 0.8. So I would end up with 80 M. Now I have a regular algebra equation here. I'm going to subtract my constant term from this side to put my constant terms together. And I'm going to end up with my 80M for my variable side. And I'm going to end up with a negative 284 on my constant term side. I need to solve for a single variable, divide both sides by 80, and I'm going to come up with M equaling, and if I put that in my calculator, I'm going to get a negative 3.55. So I cleared the decimals originally so that I wouldn't have to deal with them in my calculations, but then at the end, when I'm solving for the single variable, I can put that back into my calculator and I would come up with a negative 3.55. So one more example here. Let me turn the page. And this one's going to be a real life one, shopping. A sign in a clothing store says to take 1/3 off the marked price of a shirt. You have $20 in cash and a $5 gift certificate. What are the original prices of the shirts you can afford to buy? So we do not know the original price, so I'm going to make that my variable. I'll just go ahead and use X. I know that I'm going to take 1/3 off of the price, but I don't know what the price is, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to subtract 1/3. And that will give me, let me see here, sorry, oh, and then that's X, whoops, let's see if I can undo that again, silly writing sometimes, the stylus, I don't know if it gets static or what happens to it. Okay, so I want to do 1/3 X minus the $5, because if I have a gift certificate, I don't have to pay that $5. Use my gift certificate, so I'm going to subtract my $5. And then that has to be less than or greater than the amount of money I have, which is $20. Now, I want to combine my like terms. So I have a 1x and a negative 1/3 x. So I can combine those or simplify that. And I would end up with 1 minus 1/3 would give me 2/3. And those terms were both x's. Now I want to add 5 to both sides to get my constant terms together. So I have 2/3 x is going to be less than or equal to 25. Now I'm going to use my inverse that I learned in the last chapter. I'm going to multiply by the inverse to solve for that single variable. And I will get x less than or equal to, and now I have to take and multiply the other side by that same inverse, 3/2 or 3/2. I can't do any simplifying, so I would multiply 25 times 3 is 75. So 75 divided by 2, and I can put that in my calculator. And we're talking about price, so writing that as a decimal instead of a fraction would be acceptable. And so my answer is going to be $37.50. So I can look for shirts that cost as much as $37.50 to still be able to get have enough money when I go to checkout. And that finishes lesson 5.7 and chapter 5 in your book.